Hey, what's up, everybody? Today, we are going to be solving the age-old debate. Is Tony Pollard a true workhorse? To me, this is not much of a debate, but we're going to get into it here in a second. Now, if you haven't noticed, I'm wearing my Cowboys jersey today. I just had to do it for today's video, but just to let you guys know, I'm not biased towards any of these players when it comes to fantasy standpoint. Obviously, I'm a Tony Pollard fan because I'm a Cowboys fan, but hey, I was telling people to fade Ezekiel Elliott the last 2 years because he was starting to suck as far as yards per carry efficiency. So if a Cowboys player does suck, I will tell you guys. But if a Cowboys player is great, I'm going to tell you guys that as well. And I'm going to tell you guys today why the Tony Pollard argument that he's not a true workhorse or isn't a good running back or isn't going to produce this year is absolute nonsense. Okay, so I'm going to get started here, and this is why Tony Pollard could absolutely break fantasy football this year. He could be the number one running back in fantasy football by a long shot and even run away with the field. I'm not saying that that's likely, but it's certainly in the range of outcomes. And if you don't think so, you haven't watched this guy play. So let's first dive into the Tony Pollard statistics. We look at last year, the 2022 season. He only had a 50% snap share and yet was 15th in the league in rushing with over 1,000 rushing yards. You look at the season before that. He only had a 33% snap share, which was 60th in the league and was top 30 in the league in rushing yards with 719 rushing yards, putting him at 26 in the league. So both of the last two seasons, he's had way less snap share than the running backs that are in the territory landing around him as far as overall yardage gain. So he's putting up way more yardage than he should be based on the amount of carries that he's been getting. And this is very much because of his insane yards per touch efficiency. You look at his yards per touch efficiency last year, 5.9 yards per touch, which was 5th in the NFL. Okay, so you cannot sit here and try to tell me that this guy isn't efficient. And if you want to get into the career numbers, this is where it really starts to shine and where you really see that Tony Pollard is one of the elite backs in this league. The only running backs in today's NFL that have better yards per carry efficiency than Tony Pollard on a 500-plus carry sample size are Aaron Jones and Nick Chubb. And Aaron Jones and Tony Pollard are tied with 5.1 yards per carry on a 500-plus carry sample size. Tony Pollard has had 500 carries on the dot since coming into the NFL. He's averaged over 5.1 yards per carry. That's the exact same yards per carry efficiency as Aaron Jones, one of the most efficient running backs we've seen in the league in quite some time. Aaron Jones has had 5.1 yards per carry on a slightly over 1,000 carries, and Nick Chubb is the only running back that is more efficient than those two with 5.2 yards per carry on over 1,200 carries. So on a 500-plus carry sample size, this guy is tied for second in the entire NFL in efficiency behind two fantasy running backs that we've seen be extremely dominant fantasy weapons in Nick Chubb and Aaron Jones. So I don't see why people don't see this coming. And if you look at last season, you look at the big play potential, 8.8% breakaway run rate, which is 4th in the NFL. That's plays of 15 yards or more. So 8.8% of the time when he's running the ball for 15 yards or more. He had 17 of those breakaway runs. In weeks 7 through 16 last year, Tony Pollard was the running back one in all of fantasy. Now, last year when I told people do not draft Ezekiel Elliott, he's washed up. He's no good anymore. Tony Pollard's going to take over this backfield. Everybody made fun of me for it. Everybody said, no, there's no way. Zeke has the big contract, blah, blah, blah. Look, at that point in his career, Zeke was used and washed up. I said that Tony Pollard was most likely going to take over the backfield, and that's exactly what happens. Week 7 through 16, right after he started getting utilized, he was the running back one in all of fantasy. And this, look, the Cowboys as a team, they typically lead the NFL in pace of play almost every single season. You look at last year, they were 8th in the league in pace of play. You look at the season before that, they were 2nd in the league in pace of play. And back all the way to the 2020 season, they were 2nd in pace of play. So this is a team that runs a ton of plays in their offense, thus giving their fantasy weapons more opportunities to score because they're running so many plays. Because at the end of the day, if you could run a fast offense, that's going to be the most efficient way to run an offense because you don't give the defense any time to rest. So this is incredibly important when it comes to overall points scored, and this is why you can look at the past 3 seasons in the NFL. The Cowboys are tops in the league as far as overall points scored. The only teams that scored more points last year than the Dallas Cowboys were the Super Bowl teams, the Chiefs and the Eagles. The Cowboys were the 3rd highest team in the NFL last season. That means that Tony Pollard's going to get tons of scoring opportunities. Heck, the guy had 12 touchdowns despite being in a split backfield all season and not really getting used at all until week 7. So how can you tell me that this guy doesn't have some of the highest touchdown upside in the league, if not the highest touchdown upside in the league at the running back position? In fact, I would argue that the only back that might have higher touchdown upside than Tony Pollard is Christian McCaffrey, and that's still very close. I think that Tony Pollard very well might have better touchdown upside than him because the Cowboys are a more loaded offense, and they at least have their quarterback situation figured out. So these are just some of the things that, when it comes to the Tony Pollard debate. It's just so obvious that this guy's good, and I don't know why people aren't giving him credit. Now, a big argument that a lot of people use when saying that Tony Pollard is not a true workhorse back is they say he's not big enough. He's not built like a true bell cow, right? He can't handle the workload. Who said, right? Like, this guy has not had an opportunity to handle a full workload because the coaching staff just hasn't given him one. He can't help his snap share percentage. That's determined by the coaches. He doesn't decide which plays he comes in on. He can only decide how efficient he is when he does get his opportunities, and he's done nothing but that, being, like I said, the second most efficient running back in the league on a 500-plus carry sample size, in their career as far as running backs that are still in the league. So this dude is incredibly efficient on a per carry and a per touch basis. He's a dominant PPR back because he can line up in the slot, he can line up outside, and he can line up as a wide receiver and dominate in the passing game. The dude is a good wide receiver. The dude is an incredible athlete. Okay, and again, he's on a team that's going to probably lead the league again in pace of play and points scored like they do every single season with this absolutely loaded offense. And if you look at Tony Pollard, the size argument, he's not big enough. He's not built like a true workhorse. He is the exact same size as Bijan Robinson. Bijan Robinson is 5'11", 215. Tony Pollard is 6 foot 215. These guys are the exact same size, essentially. How can you sit here and tell me that Tony Pollard is not built like a true workhorse when he is the exact same size as Bijan Robinson, who we know is fixing to be one of the biggest bell cow running backs in the entire NFL? Crickets, right? What are you talking about? He's not big enough. He's the same size as Bijan Robinson. And then you give the argument that, he got hurt in the playoffs because, he can't handle a full workload. Guys, injuries at the running back position can be incredibly random. We know this, okay? So Saquon Barkley, right? Saquon Barkley, he tore his ACL. Is that because he's not big enough and he can't handle a full workload? No, he tore his ACL because he tore his ACL. That can happen to any running back. Any running back can get hurt. Okay, so as far as coming back from the injury this season, that's really the only risk with Tony Pollard, and the dude's pretty much already 100%. Look, this is not a torn ACL. He didn't obliterate his knee like Javonte Williams. Obviously, a broken bone is a big deal, but it's not as big of a deal as a torn ACL. It's definitely something where you could come back and be 100% to start the next season. Tony Pollard's going to be 100% good to go in this high-powered offense with this insane level of efficiency. So I don't want to hear he's not big enough, he can't handle a full workload. He is the exact same size as Bijan Robinson, so I don't know why everyone tries to say that he's small. Going on with this argument. If you look at last season, the 2022 season, and you look at his passing efficiency, 1.82 yards per route run, which was fourth in the NFL, 9.5 yards per reception, second in the NFL, 3.3 yards created per touch. This was top 5 in the NFL as far as yards created per touch, which means how many yards he creates all on his own after bouncing off the first defender. So he's creating a ton of yards all on his own. This is not just yardage that's only given to him by the offensive line. I got to plug my charger in real quick to my computer. So, yeah, Tony Pollard is doing this not only behind a great offensive line, but, even after first contact, he's creating a lot of yardage just all on his own because of insane efficiency, okay? So you look at all of this, right? And you say, man, was he good just because of the situation that he was in? Was he good just because he was a change of pace backs and teams were worried about Zeke? Absolutely not. This is what's really going to kind of put the icing on the cake here, okay? When you look at Tony Pollard, and you look at how the defenses were treating him last year, he faced some of the most stacked boxes in the entire league. Average defenders in the box for Tony Pollard last season was 6.9 defenders, meaning that he was top 8 in the NFL as far as how many defenders were in the box when he was on a given play in the backfield. So when Tony Pollard was in the backfield, teams were stacking the box more so than almost any running back in the NFL because they know how good this guy is, okay? And so to give y'all an illustration of what the box is, it's basically, in between the right and left tackle and go back 6 yards. That's the box. So Tony Pollard was facing the most stacked boxes, that middle area of the field that's supposed to defend the run of almost any running back in the NFL, more so than Christian McCaffrey or Austin Eckler. And I'm going to get to that in a second. He also faced a 20.7% stacked front carry rate, which is a percentage of carries with 8 or greater defenders in the box. So 20% of the time, he was facing an extremely stacked box with 8 or more defenders, okay, and was still putting up this kind of yards per touch and yards per carry efficiency. To put this in perspective, you look at Christian McCaffrey last year. He only faced 6.4 defenders in the box on an average run, which was 52nd in the NFL. So Tony Pollard faced the 8th most defenders in the box when he ran the ball. Christian McCaffrey faced the 52nd most defenders in the box when he ran the ball last year. And Tony Pollard still had better yards per carry efficiency and yards per touch efficiency than Christian freaking McCaffrey. That should ice it right there. I mean, this dude was significantly more efficient last year than Christian McCaffrey, one of the best fantasy running backs we've ever seen on a yards per carry efficiency standpoint and a yards per touch efficiency standpoint, facing significantly more stacked boxes. And then you also look at last year's running back one, Austin Eckler, 6.2 defenders in the box, 61st in the NFL. So when it came to defenders in the box, Austin Eckler wasn't really seeing stacked boxes at all. The 61st most stacked box, as far as defenders in the box for Austin Eckler. And then you look at Tony Pollard, 6.9 defenders in the box, top 8 in the NFL. And Tony Pollard was significantly more efficient than Austin Eckler, last year's running back one, on a yards per touch basis. Austin Eckler, 5.3 yards per touch last year with these significantly less stacked boxes. Tony Pollard, 5.9 yards per touch with significantly more stacked boxes. So we're talking about two of the best fantasy running backs in the league. Last year's running back one and running back two. Tony Pollard was significantly more efficient on a per touch and a per carry basis while facing boxes that were significantly more stacked than the boxes that CMC and Austin Eckler were facing. So you cannot sit here and tell me that Tony Pollard is not an elite back. You cannot tell me he's not a true workhorse. The yards per carry efficiency, the yards per touch efficiency, his dominance, even though facing stacked boxes, even more so than Christian McCaffrey and Austin Eckler, all of these things will show you that, Tony Pollard is one of the most talented running backs in this league. Like I've been saying for a while. I said that before he took over the backfield last year. And then on top of all of this, if you've just watched this guy play, if you've watched Tony Pollard play football, you are out of your mind if you are sitting here and just telling me that he's not a good running back. If you watch this guy play, there's just no way you can think that. Use your eyes. All right, guys. I just had to get that off my chest. Tony Pollard is a true workhorse. He could easily break fantasy football this year and be the running back one in all of fantasy. Really, the only thing we're worried about is, will he be as quick and as fast and explosive coming back from the leg injury? That remains to be seen. But I think you should, draft a fair share of Tony Pollard on Underdog. Draft him in your redraft leagues. Don't worry about it. He's got tons of upside for this season, and he could absolutely explode and leave every other running back in the dust. All right, guys. See you later.